We are going to come to our third and last session of the day. Thank you so much for sticking around till the end, by the way. We really appreciate you all sticking with us throughout the day. I do have a fun fact about the name tags you all have pinned to you. So these are made out of seeds. You can actually plant these. I don't know what seeds they are, but I was told they're seeds. So you can plant them. You can take these home as a little souvenir if you would like. Maybe next year we can all go through what came through our gardens when we planted them. Maybe that's something we can do. Awesome. So I have the honor of kicking off the third session we have here, from Throwaway to Reuse, Reclaiming Cultures, Creating Systems. This is a really incredible session, like I said, that explores reuse and repair, not just as waste solutions, but as acts of cultural resistance, economic empowerment, and environmental care. I have the honor of introducing some dear friends up to the stage here. We have Gina Peltier and Joey Oppegaard-Peltier as well. Give them a round of applause. Born and raised in a small town in North Dakota, siblings Gina and Joey come from the Turtle Mountain Pembina Band of Chippewa. A sister to... One more time? Pembina. Thank you so much. Pembina Band of Chippewa, a sister tribe to the Red Lake Nation. Together, they have decades of community organizing and more recently have joined the Minnesota tribal nations in their resistance against Enbridge Line 3. Woo! They co-founded a national youth climate organization and have been actively organizing through Mukwa for the past year and a half to safeguard the Anishinaabe and Minnesota wild rice. Woo! Gina is Anishinaabe and from the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa and serves as board chair of Mukwa, an Indigenous women-led nonprofit uplifting Indigenous sovereignty and leadership. She's also the Tribal Relations Director with the Rise and Repair Alliance. Gina is an Indigenous revolutionary, and her work exemplifies the power of community-led action. She is a vocal advocate for Indigenous sovereignty, inspiring others to find their voice. Joey brings dedication to organizing and advocacy alongside his sister, with a focus on climate justice and Indigenous-led environmental protection. His work amplifies youth leadership and Indigenous sovereignty, standing alongside communities to fight to protect our Earth's resources. One more time, I'll give them a round of applause.
Brother and sister, by the way, brother and sister. And a little known fact on our matching shoes. They're embroidered, but I ordered a size too big. And so when I gifted them to my brother, I was like, just to let you know, I'm going to be ordering the same pair in my size. So we might be twinning, and has no problem because they're really comfy shoes. Makate Mukwa Dudum, Anishinaabe and Dunshaba, Mikanakruji and Iniweg, Gina Peltier and Distakaz. So I am Black Bear Clan. I am Anishinaabe with the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa, and my name is Gina Peltier. And like B said, Turtle Mountain is sister tribes with Red Lake. And so our treaty territory spans from North Dakota all the way into Minnesota. And like B said, not only do we go hard for the water, but we also go hard for wild rice and buffalo and for actually all of Mother Earth. All right.
Why am I clapping back? Because we're awesome.
Sorry. Don't mind him. He's had too much sugar and coffee today. I really want to give a shout out to the Zero Waste Coalition for inviting us and giving us space to speak with you all. Sometimes doing this work can be quite hard, but when being in spaces with like-minded people, it makes it so much easier. And really, quite honestly, the only reason I ever leave my house is to do this work. Otherwise, you can find me chilling with my dogs, doing yoga, playing some video games.
Bro.
I'm here today to talk to you about, solutions to what's going on with our waste problem and how we can associate it with the people who have been on this land since time immemorial. And so we know that the United States government was founded on genocide and slavery by a bunch of drunk, male, European American slave owners, and criminals. And the system is working exactly as it was designed. So very few people can make ridiculous amounts of money off the suffering and oppression of the rest of us. Right now, we have over half of full-time working Americans unable to afford a one-bedroom apartment. And that is a statistic you can Google. On top of that, right now we have 6 men who own more wealth than 3.8 billion people. And that's almost over half of the population of the world. And so, unfortunately, the system that we're being forced to live under has caused so much damage. And we as Indigenous nations, we know that we have other resources, we have other ways, and we have other systems. We know that Indigenous nations thrived since time immemorial, cultivating gardens and farming the land, where they didn't take any nutrients out of the soil and they didn't use any pesticides. Right now, we have nearly 50% less nutrients in our topsoil and our food because of the industrial farming that has been forced upon us. And so with Indigenous nations, that is one of the reasons that there is a continued genocide upon us, is because we are proof that large civilizations can thrive without capitalism, without colonialism, without the system that's been put in place. Even when the United States government was formed, women didn't even have the right to vote. They couldn't own land. And so we know when the European settlers came over, they had a very negative view of women. And when they came over and they saw how Indigenous nations not only honored women, but we honored all life. This isn't just about ending white supremacy. This is about ending human supremacy and getting back into right relationship with Mother Earth and each other. And so, like I said, Indigenous nations thrived since time immemorial, living off this land. If you take a look at the Blackfeet tribe, the Tzitziki tribe, when they did their controlled burns, that would be next year's feeding ground. And so when you hear people say that we followed the buffalo, actually it's quite contrary. The buffalo followed us because we were able to make the ecosystem so vibrant and so full of life that we would attract the animals. So we never had to cage animals. And same with our farming practices. You can see down with the Cherokee Nation and the way they farmed, they would always farm down at the valleys. So when the rainfall would come down through the mountains, all the nutrients would come with it. And so that was a great way to farm the land, without using any pesticides or toxic poisons. And if we were capable of doing this years, thousands and thousands of years, and if large civilizations were able to thrive, that's just proof that we can do it today. And so, I'm quite upset at the way that the United States government has not been living up to the treaties. They signed those treaties saying that they will take care of this land and they will ensure that we are able to hunt, fish, and gather. But we can't do that if our water is poisoned. We can't do that if our land is destroyed. And so with Indigenous nations, I know some of you have heard of land back. And I say it a lot, land back. And what does that mean? It does not mean, for the white people to go back to Europe and give us our land back. We signed those treaties understanding that the European settlers were displaced and they also need a home, and that Mother Earth gives plenty for us to all thrive. And so when we sign those treaties, we recognize the rights that this is also your home now too. And as long as we can all live in right relationship with each other, we can do that. So not only are Indigenous people treaty partners, non-Indigenous United States citizens are treaty partners. And so it's not just the Indigenous people who have an obligation to uphold treaties, it's also the non-Indigenous. And so when you are fighting for that clean water, you have every right to stand up and say, I am a treaty person. Treaties, according to the Constitution, Article 6, treaties are supreme law of the land. And as a treaty holder, I am demanding my government to hold themselves accountable and to provide us with clean water and clean food, because we do have solutions.
I would have thought we.
And we have better resources. Like you heard in our bio, we were really heavy in the resistance of Line 3. So thousands of people showed up and risked their lives and their freedom for everyone's water. And when you have thousands of people showing up and risking so much, that has to be something serious. As we all saw with Line 3, it's going through nearly half of North America's fresh water, and all of that oil is being sold by a foreign corporation to another foreign country. Also, that foreign country can make plastics out of that fuel. And I always bring this up because, plastics is a big thing that's on our mind. But we know that anything that's made out of plastic can be made out of hemp. And why do I bring this up? Because one of the big things that happened to us when fighting Line 3 was a lot of people said, well, how did you get here? What did you fuel your car with? And I always like to reply, certainly, sir, we never needed fossil fuels. We all know Henry Ford's first automobiles ran off of hemp fuel. Whole body was made of hemp steel, which is 1,000 times stronger than the steel we use today. So we've always had the technology and the capability to use a better resource. Right now, I could grow hemp in my backyard, I can refine it in my garage, and I can use it in my engine. But if I were to do so, the United States government would come, and they would find me, and they would probably take away my vehicle and most likely lock me up, since they had no problem throwing me in jail for praying on a bridge over the Mississippi River. True story. Charges were dropped, only because we got it all on camera. And I bring up hemp because hemp, can not only fuel your car, and you can not only make plastics out of it. Hemp restores nutrients to the soil. Hemp cleans water. Right now, they're using hemp in areas like Chernobyl to restore balance and to put nutrients back into the soil. Hemp actually...
And to make the nuclear waste inert. It takes about 3 to 4 different harvests for hemp to change the molecules of the nuclear waste and make it something that we can survive in. Is that crazy? Oh, what?
Right now, our relatives in Lower Sioux are actually building houses out of hemp. You can eat hemp. Right now, there's a store in Bemidji that sells hemp energy balls that are way better than any energy drink I've ever had. There's no crash, and it's so nutritious for you. And so we have the solutions. As some of you may know, I have been pursuing protections for wild rice here in Minnesota. And there's a huge reason I chose wild rice. One, not because it's only a keystone species. Not only is it super important to the Anishinaabe people, not many of you know, but us Anishinaabe, we originated over on the east side, over in the New York area. And our prophecies told us to go where the food grows on water, because there are visitors coming to our land, and they are not coming with good intentions. And if we would have stayed right where we are, our prophecies said that we would have no longer been people. Our people would have been annihilated. And so when we came over here, we made those beautiful treaties with our Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and really went hard for that wild rice manoomin. The one thing I do love about pursuing protections for wild rice is that it really brings to the front a big key solution that could help us all, and that is utilizing indigenous wisdom and lifeways. Since indigenous nations have been here since time immemorial, farming the land, cultivating gardens, giving women their actual sovereignty. We even had two spirits. Our two spirits were honored in our tribes. So I really love using wild rice and pursuing protections for wild rice, because not only does it need clean water to thrive, not only, once respected, can it feed the whole entire Turtle Island. Turtle Island is the Americas. It includes Canada, the United States, and Mexico. It can not only make us less dependent on foreign entities, but it can also bring forward all the other issues that we are facing today. The plastics that we are using that we don't need to be using, the data centers that are coming, the pipelines, the mining. We don't need any of that. And all of that is going to threaten and is threatening not only our wild rice, our food source, but it's also threatening our water. And water, we need water to live, And so with protecting wild rice, it's been really nice to bring to our community's attention all the other issues, and then also the solutions that we should be utilizing. Like I said, the system that's been in place is working exactly as it was designed. And so what we can do is get rid of this system. We don't need it. We see that, our people are suffering, and enact one that actually works for everyone. And if Indigenous tribes could thrive since time immemorial, living well and in right relationship with Mother Earth, we can all do that. I know we can. We just got to take the kindness and patience in our hearts and educate each other. One thing I do is I do talk to everyone about this. I even talk to the people who change my oil about this stuff. Usually I try to find common ground. I always mention, like, sir, you don't make enough, obviously. You see these fossil fuel companies making trillions of dollars in 1 year, and the person who's changing my oil is making $15 an hour. And we all saw what happened during the pandemic. These fossil fuel companies raised their prices and made record-breaking profits. But what were they doing? People were losing their homes, they were losing their lives, their family members, their jobs. And these fossil fuel companies raised the prices and made everything worse for everyone else.
And they got a bailout. Yep.
And they got a bailout. Did we get a bailout? Were we able to keep our homes when we lost our jobs because we couldn't go to work? No. That's a system that isn't working for us. And so I get really disheartened when I hear our leaders and our politicians say, oh, but we need corporations. Oh, but we need capitalism. Obviously, no, we don't. It's not working. Nearly half of us are suffering, and we have no more food, or no more nutrients in our food. I love food, guys. I go hard for food, obviously. And so, when I'm up here talking, I'm asking everyone, to please embrace the Indigenous wisdom, the Indigenous lifeways, the Indigenous leaders who are taking a stand. That is one of the reasons that there is a continued genocide upon us. We are proof that these systems work. And not only that, we're proof that this land was taken in a very barbaric way. Right now, Indigenous women are 13 times more likely to end up missing and murdered than anybody else in the United States because of the stereotype that the United States government puts on us, that we're drunks, that we're drugs, that we just rely on the United States government, when we all know that's not true. My aunties are the ones who showed me which trees that you can harvest and patch up an open wound with. My aunties show me which berries can help make your eyes better. My aunties show me which plants will help your bronchitis cough. And don't get me started on Tylenol and our red willow. We all know that these pharmaceutical companies got Tylenol from Indigenous nations, because if you just take the red willow that could grow in your backyard, a little piece of bark, and chew on it, that works way better than Tylenol. And there's no they're not made with petrochemicals, there's no side effects, and all this goodness, and it can grow in your backyard. I know someone who was arrested for stealing Tylenol because they had a really bad toothache. And it's really sad because those medicines grow in our backyard. So when a lady was talking about medical waste, like, I know a way we can really reduce a lot of medical waste. Let's listen to the Indigenous people over here. They got some really good ways on how to make some medicines without having to, get them shipped from overseas onto our front doors, And so when you see us out there, advocating, give us, some leeway and help us out and educate your neighbors on, what Indigenous tribes have done and what we are doing. Like I said, right now our relatives in Lower Sioux are building hemp houses, and so I could go on and on, you guys. I'm sorry. But I just wanted to let you know that there are solutions, there are better ways that we should be utilizing. And I just want to give a shout out to my aunties for showing me the way. I am half Anishinaabe and I am half European American. And sometimes I feel really bad because my Anishinaabe aunties told me that we have to have compassion for our non-Indigenous relatives because they have been farther replaced from their tribal ways than we are. And so it's up to us to help our neighbors our relatives recognize that we have better systems, we have better ways that we should enact and implement ASAP, like 500 years ago. So thanks, y'all.
Everyone, a round of applause for my older sister. Older sister, older sister. If she had the mic, she'd say I have more gray hairs. I did warn you, though. I was going to be moving around just a little bit. Ani Buju Ernest Joseph Oppegaard-Peltier III Indigenica Makadewa Makandunja Mandunjnaba Makanakwa Ijiji Niniweg. Oof, duh. Oh, Bamijamak. Forgot that part. Everyone in this room, besides our Anishinaabe person, Gina, and maybe a few of you out here, know what I said. Don't know what I said. And what I just said was, hi, hello, my name is Ernest Joseph Oppegaard-Peltier III. I come from the Black Bear clan of the Turtle Mountain Band of Anishinaabe, and I live in Bemidji. Oofda. That was a lot to say in just a short amount of time. You know what? I was giving Lucy a little crap because she was like, hey, we're going to share your spot with a few people. And I'm like, yo, my introduction takes 5 minutes. I know it. So it took us 500 years to get this mic, and I'm not giving it up yet, Lucy. I'm not.
That's the time.
I am the co-executive director of Mukwa, which Gina said she covered. It's an Indigenous woman-led organization, and obviously I'm not a woman, but I am a two-spirited individual. I carry the fire and the water. I also am one of the program managers for our Indigenous Just Transition. And a lot of people in here might know what the Just Transition is. AOC used to cover that back in 2018. They built on that. It is about transitioning all of our industries into something that could be more sustainable. And the Indigenous Just Transition part of the conversation is missing within those original frameworks. And I'm coming in here to talk about the ancestral knowledge and the Indigenous futurism. Ooh, what is that cool word? It means I love the stars. I love thinking about the future. Who all in here is a Star Trek fan? Star Trek? What's your favorite? What's your favorite franchise or like series? Yeah. Next. Oh, that's a good one. Did you know that Kirk and Spock went back in time to go save the whales? Right. That's the integration of our sciences with the beings around us. Isn't that cool? Oh my God. And did you know, like Discovery, they played around with mycelium, which is, for layman terms, mushrooms. And that was how they generated their go for their ships. Indigenous sovereignty, like Gina said, we've had science that we've integrated with our culture, with our spirituality, with our governance, with our economy. Why aren't we doing that now? You know, I asked that question over and over and over and over and over again, and Gina covered it. That's that white nationalist, that white supremacy, that is that construct of those rich people holding all that power and control and not wanting to give it out to any of us. If we would embrace the Indigenous Just Transition, we're talking about embracing biomaterials. I know I'm in a room of climate folks, and when we hear biomaterials, we think of peat moss and like, ooh, leave our peat moss alone, crap, ooh. And I agree with you. Leave the peat moss alone. That is a carbon sink that holds a lot of like our ability to suck up those bad crud. I'm in school. Bad crud in the atmosphere and in our environment. But when I talk about biomaterials, Gina covered it. One of the best, easiest, fastest cash crops in America is something that was banned in America in the early 1940s, 1950s, when Henry Ford, that Nazi, first made those hemp vehicles. They fought against I think it was the Sackler family or the Purdue family. It was a petrol fuel company that were making petrochemicals. And that's how we got 3M. You know, 3M stopped us from actually obtaining that hemp vehicle that Gina was talking about, bankrupt like 13 different farming families. And if you heard me earlier when I was talking about the farming, I'm not joking around. I'm a multi-generational farming family person married into a multi-generational farming family. You know, my in-laws farm out of Erskine area, which is over by the Kirkson area, over by the Red Lake area, where is my ancestral homes. And when we talk about like governing the land, we talked about how hemp takes nuclear waste and make it inert. But did you know that hemp can actually power this whole entire room? And you're like, what? And I'm not talking about burning it. Oh God, no, not that peat moss conversation again, Joe, not the peat moss conversation. I'm talking about, there is a lab over in Canada called Canadian Light Source that has developed hemp solar panels. Holy crap, Joe, did you just say hemp solar panels? I did. I did just say that we could get off of the slave labor minerals out of the Congo and start producing our solar panels out of hemp. And it's not just solar panels. For about 3 decades now, we've had supercapacitors made out of hemp. What is a supercapacitor? Do you know what a supercapacitor is? It's a battery. That is your battery in your cell phone. That is your battery in probably this microphone, but for sure there's a handful over there. There's a handful in the camera over there. There are little microcapacitors all over in all our technology, and they're little batteries, but they're corrosive. They're made with lithium. They're made with extracted materials. The hemp version of our batteries, they're non-corrosive. They're non-acid base. So when you dispose of it, it's not leaking poison into our environment. The only thing that's not renewable in it is the aluminum that is the coating of the battery itself. Holy crap, that is so cool. We could revolutionize energy and how we see it, and energy storage. We don't need this fossil fuels, we don't need the natural gas. When we're collecting the sun's rays on a plant-built solar panel. And I look at these data centers and I'm like, crap, data centers. He's going into it. He's going into it. Hey Siri, what is it like outside? Oh, that. Oh yeah, we're in a school. So I use data centers. We all use data centers. And it's a shitty thing to think about. It's like, shame on you. We were told, stop using data centers. Don't use those AIs. And I'm like, you heard me. I'm a nerd. I said, who likes Star Trek in this room? Let me hear it. So when you tell me that, hey, Joe, you can't play your video games because this data center is harming us, but that data center is what's managing the servers that you're playing on, I'm like, oh crap, don't tell the other gamers. They're going to go ape shit at us. They're going to hear us cancel this crap. But then I go back to our indigenous knowledge. You know, that conversation about how they integrated those whales in Star Trek to navigate the stars. That's why they went back and saved the whales, if you didn't know, in Star Trek. They went to, because those whales navigate the stars. They communicate. So if we can integrate that biomaterial into this system that we have now, those data centers are made of chips. We call them here in Minnesota, not superconductors, semiconductors. That's the word, semiconductors. And you know what? I was reading an article about 2-3 weeks ago. We can make semiconductors out of tea leaves. Hello? Hello?
Like a leaf that's used.
The wasted tea leaves.
Wait.
After you done make your tea and put the honey in it and discard it, they're making semiconductors out of tea leaves. They're making semiconductors out of any little thing that we can grow at home. And my question is like, holy crud. If we can make semiconductors out of that, what else can we make? We could make that whole data center into something that's not harmful. We could design that building. They have buildings designed in deserts that can make ice. Did you know that? Without power. It's just how they sculpt, or how the architects build those buildings, how they catch the wind, how deep it goes. You know, we could make this stuff that lives in right relations with us. Gina was talking about plastics, and I know we're at the Zero Waste Fest, and I can't leave without talking about single-use plastics. I love you all. I love you all. You guys are amazing, powerful organizers in your own right. The horrible thing I have to say is I am so sad when I have to tell people, yo, I got a bamboo toothbrush. I've been using bamboo for pardon my words, 3 years. Why are you still on your plastic? Shame on you. Why are you still using your plastic? That left a bad taste in your mouth, didn't it? It did to me. I don't like shaming my friends. I don't like shaming my family members. I don't like shaming my community members. But the shame comes in because it's a sin. We're damaging our environment. Biomaterials could stop that. Like we just talked about how batteries are not corrosive if it's made out of hemp biogel. What if we could make plastic out of biomaterials? Holy crud, we can. Oh, you can make single-use to multi-use plastics that could decompose without leaving that contaminants. You know, I hesitate to tell my friends, my family members to stop buying stuff because I grew up in a low-income house. We were poor. We're still poor, but it's like we don't have the privilege to decide where we shop. My bamboo toothbrush, don't hate me. I buy from Amazon. Yo, where else am I going to get it in Bemidji, Minnesota? Just saying. That accessibility isn't here. It's because our industries are not here. You know, our industries are kept at a global level. And when we talk about biomaterials, we talk about breaking the industry up into microeconomies. Because you can grow leaves on your trees, grass trimmings in your grass, and take it to a processing center to make your single-use plastic bottle without petrochemicals. You could have your neighbor who's raking just drop it off. That provides local jobs, and that makes sure that your local areas are sovereign. Ooh, I love that word. I'm Native American. Of course, I love sovereignty. Oh, wow. But sovereign, could you imagine? You don't have to rely on Congo's slave labor minerals. You don't have to rely on the Talon mines to make your semiconductors. You don't have to rely on foreign materials, even if it's a state foreign. You can rely on your neighbor to bring his leaves to the compost site that is going to make it into that plastic, make it into that toothbrush, and make sure that that toothbrush isn't going to poison that landfill and that it's going to break down within the 30 to 60 days. Oh, crap. Why aren't we there yet? Capitalism. That industry, they don't, you know, we just watched Minnesota Power get bought out by one of the biggest private equity, BlackRock. You know, that power and control, it divides us. They want us divided. They don't want us to have these conversations with farmers saying, hey, we could save your family farm by easy, cheap cash crop that yields 3 times a year. God, that'd be amazing. I got to give it up. 500 years, Lucy. 500 years. Told you she gave us a full hour. Are you tired? You ready to go home? We could do this, folks. We have the technological knowledge. We have the ancestral knowledge to do this. What we don't have is the political will. We're stuck at fighting each other saying, hey, stop using your plastic toothbrush. When what we should be saying is, hey, Orgel, I see you make our toothbrush. We're going to put in legislation, we're going to put in policy that you have to use local materials from local communities and produce that locally. Why don't we? Why are we attacking each other when we should be attacking that system that's keeping us from using or from changing into that next generation? From reaching into the stars, from becoming that federation of planets in Star Trek. from being able to be in right relationships, not just with each other, but with all beings around us. That's our ancestral knowledge. Being in right relations with all beings around us. Chimigwij, everybody. We are the Peltier Kids. You can find us out of Mukwa, mukwamenkana.org. It means the bear path. We are Black Bear Clan members. We are the guardians, the educators, and the holders of our cultural knowledge, and we are trying to do what's good for our environments. If you want to help us out, because we are broke grassroots organizers, please donate to us. And also, thank you again, Lucy, for the space. Thank you, B. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you for sticking around until the very end, but we're not done yet. They have just a little bit more to go. Here you go, Lucy.